So we know that numbers can be represented as fractions, as decimals, and as percentages, and they all relate to each other. In this series of videos, we're going to have a look at how we convert between fractions, percentages, and decimals. This video in particular, we're going to focus on converting between fractions and percentages, and between percentages and fractions. So, let's begin. Now in front of me right now is a little chart here that can be useful to refer back to that I'll be slowly completing throughout. We've got fractions here, percentages here, and decimals here. And we can use this chart to work out the steps that we need to take to convert between each of them. In this video, we're going to be focusing on completing this top section of our chart here, where we're converting between fractions to percentages and back between percentages and fractions. Now, before we go any further, I think it'd be really useful to understand what the word percent actually means. Now, the word percent is made up of two shorter words. First, the word per, which means for every, and the word cent, which means 100. So when we join it together and talk about percent, we're talking about for every 100. Now, you might be asking yourself right now, what does that actually mean? Well, let's pretend for a moment that in a sport, I was recording the percentage of my shooting accuracy. And let's pretend that I was shooting at 35%. What that is actually saying is at the current rate that I'm shooting, if I were to take 100 shots, I'd be expected to make 35 of those shots. Now, one of the many reasons why percentages might be useful is it allows us to compare two quantities with each other. For example, what if I had Caleb here that took 15 attempts at goal and made 9 shots? However, Tom took 32 attempts at goal and made 18 shots. Who here is the more accurate shooter? Well, clearly right now, Tom has made more shots than Caleb. But does that mean that he's the more accurate shooter? Well, to find that out, let's begin to break this problem down. Right now, Caleb has made 9 of his 15 attempts, where Tom has made 18 of his 32 attempts. Now what I've done here is represented Caleb and Tom's shooting accuracy as a fraction. However, you'll immediately notice that it's very difficult to compare the shooting accuracy of these fractions because the denominator in the fractions aren't the same. So this is just one of many reasons why converting to percentages comes in handy. Now to convert a fraction to a percentage, what we need to do is multiply that fraction by 100. So with Caleb here, we're actually saying that we're going to have 9 out of 15 times by 100. Now, when I'm multiplying a fraction, I need to represent this 100 as a fraction, which is going to be 100 over 1. Now immediately notice that the numerator here of 100 and the denominator here of 15 can both be divided by 5. So I'm going to cancel these ones down. So that's still going to be 9 over, but 15 divided by 5 is 3, multiplied by 100 divided by 5, which is 20, over 1. Next, I multiply the numerators together and the denominators together. So 9 times 20 is going to be 180, 3 times 1 is going to be 3. And this is a percentage. Finally, 180 divided by 3 is going to be 60%. So Caleb is shooting at 60%. Next, let's have a look at Tom. Now Tom here is shooting 18 shots out of 32 attempts. To get that to a percentage, we need to multiply by 100. We represent 100 as a fraction, being 100 over 1. From here, I'll see if I can cancel these two terms down. Now I immediately notice that 32 and 100 can both be divided by 4. So when I cancel this one down, it's going to be 18 over 32 divided by 4 is going to be 8. Multiplied by 100 divided by 4, which is 25, over 1. Now I multiply the numerators and the denominators together. Now 18 times 25 I worked out just before to be equal to 450. And 8 times 1 is going to be over 8. Remember, this is a percentage. Now, if you work out what 450 divided by 8 is, you'll find that it's equal to 56.25%. Now, what does any of this mean? Well, at the current rate that they're shooting, if Caleb was to shoot 100 shots, we would expect him to make approximately 60 of them. Where if Tom was to shoot 100 shots, we'd approximately expect him to make 56.25 of them. Obviously he can't make 0.25, but we can now see that Caleb is the more accurate shooter. So what have we learnt so far? Well, if we've got a fraction and we want to move it to a percentage, we need to take that fraction of the numerator over the denominator and simply multiply it by 100. So let's consider for a moment converting a mixed fraction such as 4 1/4 that I've got here to a percentage. Now my first step here will be to convert this mixed fraction to an improper fraction. So 4 1/4 is going to be equal to 4 times 4 is 16 plus 1 is 17 over 4 as an improper fraction. Now, as we've just learnt, to convert a fraction to a percentage, we need to multiply by 100. So let's multiply this by 100, representing this as a fraction of 100 over 1. From here, I'll see if I can cancel down the numerator and denominator that I've got here. Now, 4 divides into both. It divides into 4 once, so it's going to be 17 over 1, times 100 divides into 4 25 times, so that's going to be 25 over 1. Now I multiply the numerators together and the denominators together. So 17 times 25 is going to be equal to 425 over 1 times 1 is equal to 1. So that's a percentage, and 425 divided by 1 is simply going to be 425. So 4 1/4 is equivalent to 425%. Well, what if I want to go the other way? What if I want to convert a percentage here back to a fraction? Well, let's remember that the word percent means for every 100 or out of 100. So what that simply means is our percentage, to convert it to a fraction, is the same as saying it's out of 100. And suddenly 80% is written as a fraction. However, whenever we write fractions, we want to write it in simplest form. So we look at the highest number that divides into both 80 and 100, which in this case is 20. 20 divides into 80 4 times and divides into 100 5 times. So the equivalent fraction of 80% is 4 over 5 or 4/5. But hang on, what if we have a percentage that's greater than 100? Well, we follow the same steps. For every 100 means out of 100. So this is equal to 520 out of 100. Now we've got it in a fraction, so let's cancel it down. This 0 will cancel here, so it's equal to 52 out of 10. Now 10 goes into 52 5 times, and we're a remainder of 2, which is still out of 10. And then 2 out of 10 cancels down to 1 out of 5. So the equivalent fraction to 520% is 5 1/5. So when we're converting percentages back to fractions, what we're actually doing is taking the percentage, dividing it by 100, and finally we're simplifying. Okay, so now we've got that. Sometimes percentages aren't always whole numbers. So what happens if we have a percentage that is a decimal? Well, let's start with the same thing. Let's take that percentage, which is 67.7 here, and put it out of 100. We now have this percentage as a fraction. However, this fraction has a decimal in it, and when we simplify it, we need to remove this decimal. Now, one way to do it is to multiply this top number here by 10, which would essentially move this decimal one place to the right. However, if we multiply the top by 10, we must also multiply the bottom by 10. So when we do that, that's going to be equal to 677 divided by 1000. Now once we've got this, we've got to look to see whether we can simplify this fraction. Now I can tell you that this fraction is already in simplest form. So 67.7% is the equivalent to 677 over 1000. Let's try it again with this decimal here. Our first step will be to put this percentage of 3.86 over 100 because that's what the word percent means. But I've got this decimal here, so I need to move this decimal place 2 spots to the right. I can do that by multiplying by 100, but whatever I do to the top, I must do to the bottom. So 3.86 times 100 is 386, over 100 times 100 is going to be 1 with all the zeros, or 10,000. Now we've got to look to see if we can simplify this. They're both even numbers, so that means 2 will divide into both the top and the bottom. 2 will divide into 386 193 times, and 2 will divide into 10,000 5,000 times. Now, I can tell you that this fraction is now in simplest form. So, 3.86% is the equivalent to 193 over 5,000. Now we've covered percentages that are decimals, there's one more type of percentage that I often see people get stumped with. And that's when percentage is written as a fractional percentage. So let's have a look at this. Now to convert a fractional percentage to a fraction, we still follow the same step. We take the percentage of 1 over 5 and we divide it by 100. Because percent means for every 100. Now when we're dividing fractions, we've got to represent 100 as a fraction. So we're dividing by 100 over 1. But hang on a sec, when we divide fractions, that's the same as saying 1 over 5 multiplied the flipped over fraction, which is going to be 1 over 100. Now, when we're multiplying fractions, we multiply the numerators together with the denominators. So 1 times 1 is 1, 5 times 100 is 500. So that means 1/5 of a percent is equal to 1 over 500. So let's take a look at the final sort of fractional percentage that I see stump a lot of people. What if we've got a mixed fractional percentage? Well, let's convert this mixed fraction first into an improper fraction by going 3 times 4 is 12 plus 1 is 13 over 4%. Now to convert a percentage to a fraction, we take that percentage of 13 over 4 and we divide it by 100. Remember, we need to represent 100 as a fraction, which is 100 over 1. And if we're dividing a fraction, we simply flip this side, so it's going to be 1 over 100, change this sign to multiply, and it's going to be 13 over 4 multiplied by 1 over 100. So let's multiply the numerators, which is going to be equal to 13 times 1, which is 13, and the denominators, which is 4 times 100, which is going to be 400. So what we've worked out here is that 3 1/4% is equal to 13 out of 400 as a fraction. Okay, so we've gone through a lot here today, but the golden rules to remember. If we're starting at a fraction and we're converting to a percentage, we take that fraction of the numerator over the denominator and we multiply by 100. But if we're starting at percentage and moving to a fraction, we remember the word percent, which means for every 100 or out of 100, and remind ourselves that that means the percentage needs to be divided by 100, and once we've done that, we simplify the fraction. Now, as with all mathematics, the best way to learn it is to give it a go yourself. So I've given you a variety of problems in front of me for you to practice at home. Remember, you can rewind the video to have a look at similar example problems to help you out.